Welcome to Shore Perspectives, a community feature of WESR Radio, highlighting the spirit of the shore from those who call it home.
Patrick Rogers, and I'm from Seaview, or Accomack, Virginia. I think I've always been treasure hunting. As a kid on the shore, growing up on the Barrier Islands and Bayford and Nassauatics, I've always been enamored by what treasures I can find and kind of what mischievous things I can get into by myself. One of the most notable things was on Hog Island, probably in the early 90s, was a stainless silver coffee pot from a steamliner, an old steamliner. But I've found everything from bits and pieces of tall ships and Spanish galleons and coconuts and a lot of things from Ocean City. My kids are very happy about the skim boards and the boogie boards. So every year we seem to get these nor'easters, and kind of the thing I like to do in early fall is to go walk the perimeter Seaview, the community that's on Folly Creek. And I like to pick up trash and obviously try to see if I can find something that's really interesting. So this year, or actually last week, I went out walking the perimeter. It takes me a couple days to get my way through from the north side to the south side. I walk around to this corner and there's a bunch of debris. There's debris everywhere. Of course, there's always lots of pieces of docks everywhere. Poles, deck boards. So I walk around to this corner and there's a swath of reed grass, and on top of this reed grass looked to be a wine bottle. And his sun was out, so it was shining. He was like, hey, here I am. Come over here and take a look at me, you know. And I didn't have any high hopes for it because most of the time it's just bottles, and I put them in the golf cart and I throw them away or recycle them. So I get there and I look at it and I say, that's kind of interesting. There's stuff in it. So I look at it and I said, wow, there's some really nice cursive handwriting in there. It's kind of a thing of past. You don't see much cursive handwriting. So, oh boy, what is this? So I pick up the bottle and I try to open it. And I could tell it looks like to be an old barefoot wine bottle with the aluminum cap. Well, the aluminum cap is corroded, so I couldn't get it off. So I put it in the back and said, oh, I'll get home. I'll try to cut the glass open or bust it open to get it and see what's inside. So after about another hour of picking up trash, I made my way back to the house and was able to get the bottle open. And there was a bunch of little rolled up pieces of paper, all beautifully written pieces. And I said, well, let me dry them out. They're a little bit wet, so I put them in the book and laid them nice and flat. And so about an hour or two will go by, and I said, all right, I'm going to start trying to read these things. So I was able to break the bottle open and started looking into these. And I'll read the first page, because the first page happened to be the first thing that I read. And it was quite interesting. It's dated June 28th, 2018. Dear Justin, this is the first in hopes of many future letters to come honoring your memory. I am still at shock at your passing. It feels so surreal, like a bad dream I'll eventually wake up from. That I'll hear your phone ringing any second, and I'll hear your voice say, hey, Aunt Cammie, as it always so cheerfully did. So that kind of gave me chills. I was like, all right, this is not a romantic letter. So I started diving into, it's probably about 20 pages, what looks to be written on a church notebook. And coincidentally, at the bottom of every page is a passage. So I start reading through this, and this letter is written by a lady by the name of Justin Hudson. And Justin is her nephew. Justin Hudson and her and the rest of the Hudson family resided in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And during Justin's upbringing, Cammie was kind of her surrogate mother, so to speak. She took care of him, helped raise him, and tried to guide him in the right direction. And reading further into it, there's a lot of heartfelt stories about, just kind of some funny things that happened, and also main focus of it was what kind of didn't happen right. In this letter, I thought, well, maybe there'd be a happy ending to it. But really, the letter is the memoirs of Cammie and the murder of her nephew. And into that letter, it's kind of hard to describe because it goes into the life of this young man, his aspiring family, his wife and his 2 children. And like I said before, they were brought up in a very religious setting. They were deep in faith. And Justin, being the individual of wanting to help and showing his Christian faith and how he thought he should be, he took upon others to try to, correct them, guide them right. And same went for his future wife in this letter. She went down the wrong path with drugs. It seemed to be that they started to get right. They struggled for quite a considerable time. And they were never able to get 2 solid feet underneath of them to really get ahead in the family. So during the marriage, they had 2 children, 2 young children, and they still struggled. They lived in a van. They would move from place to place. They sometimes needed help living in a hotel, and Cammie was there along the way to help them any way she could. She talks about some of these endeavors that they embarked on, good, bad, ugly, and ultimately in the end, the drugs prevailed and Justin was murdered. I don't know how he was murdered. I don't even know what happened to the mother, but the 2 kids ended up in foster care. He was a very intelligent man. I believe he went to college from my understanding. So very intelligent, very driven by faith. And from my perspective on that, with him, follow faith, believe, understand that there's always a plan, and God has a will for you. And I think from his children's perspective, they understand that, hey, your father was a smart man and guided by God, and you follow those principles, you're going to be just fine in life. And of course, absolutely, in all the stories they talked about, is their father absolutely loved them with every muscle and fiber he had. I thought this was really interesting because the date that I found it was the same date as the son who's in foster care's birthday, which I thought was really interesting. Also, the date that this letter was written was my wife and I's wedding anniversary of June 28th. So there's a lot of really interesting tidbits in here, and it's very deep, it's very emotional, and it's really touching. There was enough in here to be able to figure out who Cammie was. I was able to reach out to her, and she answered right away. And I said, hey, I found this bottle. Do you recall this? And she's like, yes, I do. So, well, can you tell me a little about it? Where did you put it out in the ocean? When did you do that? She's like, well, it was really shortly after the date, which was 2018. I said, okay, where? She said, Ocean City. She said, I ended up moving to Ocean City just before the passing of Justin. And so that bottle has been out in the ocean and made its way all the way down from Ocean City, all the way down to Folly Creek in 7 years' time. My wife and I and family members, we've talked about it. We've all read the messages, and I think we all kind of come to the same conclusion, in that, there's a story here, and will the foster kids ever know that story? And that's one thing that we're still trying to figure out what to do with. I've asked what to do with these messages, and Cammie has requested that we place them back into the ocean. So I'm hoping that talking about it either through Facebook or with WESR, that one day that these messages will find their way back to his children, and they'll be able to hear a little bit about their parents and their deep Christian faith, and that, hey, life is hard. These are the things you definitely need to stay away from, and these are the repercussions that happen when you get involved in that kind of things. So I think there's some positive that can come from it, and that's what I've taken from it. And I've met a new friend. Cammie's a great person, still deeply rooted in her faith, and she has been a real pleasure to talk to and learn more about Justin and the situation that is the message in the bottle. Well, I think it all reaches to being in nature and being out, enjoying the Eastern Shore, regardless if it's a message in a bottle, a coconut, or sterling silver coffee pot from a cruise liner. Being deep in in the wilderness and your thoughts, as I refer, your Mad Max moment, just enjoy everything that nature and God has to offer. I mean, I think that's the main point for me, being that there is a bittersweet connection with the message in the bottle. It just drives home every day that enjoy what precious rarity that we have, that is the Eastern Shore of Virginia.
For Shore Perspectives and WESR Radio, I'm Kelly Gaskell.